If you haven't taken real time off in over a year, you might think that you're indispensable. Well, let me tell you that you're not. You're just creating a single point of failure, not only in the workplace, but in your life. I'll tell you how. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host. This is where we discuss how a thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change in your leadership and career. I want to know how many of you are putting self-care and time off on the back burner because you think that this is what great leaders do. That's a myth because in the real world, people who place work before life and health, they have serious consequences to pay. And it might not necessarily be limited to the workplace. So ask yourself, what reward are you gaining for the sacrifice that you're giving? Because it is a sacrifice. And ultimately, what it's doing is it's undermining your leadership. And that may be the least of your concerns. And so before we move on into the rest of the episode, we're talking about giving. And so I was told that I need to give some instructions on how to listen to the show because my friend Teresa messaged me and said that she did not realize that she could listen to my show on an Android phone. So yes, you can listen on Apple, you can listen on Android, whichever podcast platforms that are available, Spotify, Amazon, Google, but you can also listen on my website, crossroadsandcatalyst.com. She and I got a really good laugh out of that. And you'd have to know my friend Teresa in order to know that if you don't tell her sometimes explicitly where to find something, she won't even notice it and it's no big deal. So shout out to Teresa. Thank you for reminding me to share that information with my listeners. So for our crossroads, like I said, we're talking about the sacrifice that's undermining your leadership. And I heard a story recently about a CFO who had not taken a vacation in about 5 years or so. Now that is a long time. And one of the questions is, what kind of message does that send? What does the team understand about time off and the importance of that in that particular work culture? This is a problem because if you're continually showing up to work day after day, you're giving it your all, but you're never taking time off, you're going to have some issues. And it might not simply be a headache or you're just tired. It might actually work through your entire body. People have stress related health issues because they don't take off work. They don't allow themselves to decompress and just slow down. So we have to deal with this because you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you don't have anything to give, there is nothing else that you will be able to provide to your organization. So ask yourself this question. If you collapse tomorrow, would your team be okay? And if the answer is yes, why aren't you taking time off and resting? But if the answer is no, you've probably built something that's way too fragile. And you may not be the only point of failure. It's just that you might be the one that kicks it off. So let's get some clarity about this situation because self-care is not selfish. And so I want us to definitely go into this with the recognition that in order for us to run at our best, to be our best, to optimize our performance, we have to get rest. It is necessary for us. So loyalty to a company may be one of the reasons why people do this. And I don't want to marginalize the fact that people work hard. They have a strong work ethic. They're very dependable, they're very reliable. They have a lot of drive and ambition. And these can be excellent qualities. But when they're not exercised in moderation, it can be catastrophic, not only to you, to your family, even to your organization. Because again, you're setting an example for your team. And if your team walks away with the notion that it is looked down upon to take time off, you're going to wear them out and you're going to run them off. And so I want us to think about this because we're living in an era where 20-year veterans get laid off on a Zoom call. And sometimes they don't even get that. So think about that. You have people who have dedicated themselves to an organization and have committed to doing excellent work. They have proven their ability, But how important is that ability when they're determining who's going to be riffed? And I know people who have been laid off on a Zoom call. It is so unpleasant. And I don't want us to take for granted that yes, we should show up, we should do an excellent job, that we should be committed. But I also don't want us to forget that these are organizations that have their own ideas in mind as to what success looks like. And sometimes success for them looks like making cuts today in order to get us where we think we should be 12 months from now, 5 years from now. And maybe our roles are not a part of that process. They're not a part of that success even. So your devotion to never taking PTO, it's definitely not building job security. But what it could be doing is building resentment, because inevitably the restructure will happen. And I worked at an organization, I actually worked at several organizations where some of these rifts, you could just see a pattern, a cycle that was taking place. And you never knew who was going to be on the chopping block when it happened. So be cognizant that it could come knocking at your door. It could show up at your desk at any time. And what will you get out of it? You might not even get a severance package. So consider that. And then also consider the fact that if you're refusing to take time off of work, and I'm not just talking about a few hours, I'm talking about some maybe, a week off, maybe even 2 weeks off. If you're not giving yourself time to rest and refuel and recharge, what you're paying is an indispensability tax. And so what is that? Well, this is the tax that you pay for needing to be needed. You think potentially that you are the only person who can do that job, or you're the only one who knows how to do it as well as it needs to be completed, that you can't trust anybody else to do that job. Well, let me tell you something. If you don't show up for a week, or if something puts you down and you can't show up for 6 weeks, the work is still going to be done. And maybe it won't be done to your specifications, but it'll still be done. And consider this, because when you talk about paying a tax is not always monetary. It's not always dollars and cents that you pay, because the tax could actually be your actual health. And I'm talking about your mental, physical, and even your spiritual health. And what about your time? What about your relationships? So you start to miss dinner. You start to miss a child's game. You start to miss other family events. And before you know it, you're completely wrapped up in work, and your family doesn't know you anymore. You're estranged even from your family. There are all kinds of things that take place. And maybe some of you are using work as a getaway from what's going on at home. And so, of course, that's a different topic for a different day. But all of these things play into how and why we show up, and why we may put our time and our needs on the back burner. Self-care equals sustainability. It is not selfishness. It is important. And again, we have all of these terms that we throw around in the world, and sometimes we use them so flippantly that they really don't have any meaning. But when you think about self-care, you should care for yourself. You should do things that are going to help you be better. And think about the consequences. Again, your team is going to model your behavior. And if you're burned out, you're making poor decisions, maybe you even have a short temper, you might be experiencing high turnover, because people do not want to be bound to their work. They have to know that they can step away from it. And you will be the one to help set the culture and the tone for that. Okay? You're not a martyr, but you could be a cautionary tale if you continue down this path. So just understand that rest is a strategy. It's not being lazy. All right. And some other things that actually contribute to sometimes why some leaders won't take off is they lack trust and confidence in their teams. So there's some insecurity there. But this is one of those things that needs to be addressed, because if you don't think that you can trust your team to do their job, well, then ultimately the buck stops with you. You have to take the time to properly train them and coach them and to develop them so that they can succeed at their jobs. People show up and they want to do well. They want to succeed. But if you're the impediment to that, well, then ultimately, yes, there's going to be some type of failure that happens. And so you won't be able to take off work, which is a problem in and of itself. And then also consider this. There may be, of course, sometimes during the year where taking extended breaks is not the best time of the year. Okay, I get it. But you also have to consider exercise, consider what you eat, because there are options that will help to re-energize you. There are options that will kind of drain you. What about some recreational activities and hobbies? I don't think that we even talk about those kind of things anymore. Do people have hobbies anymore? I have hobbies. I have things that I like to do. I would like to think that a lot of you do as well. Take some time and participate in those and use those as your creative outlets and just to take some time to recharge. It's important. Even listening to music, just sitting back and enjoying things that give you pleasure. Important. So then what choices do we have? Well, I think some of you may be operating like it's 1985 when loyalty was still a two-way street. For a really long time, organizations rewarded loyalty. They rewarded longevity. They rewarded certain types of behavior because they wanted more of it. The deal is that the companies started changing and the people didn't, because we're creatures of habit. Okay, we want to show up to work. We have expectations on what we're going to see, what we're going to do. And because we like things to continue in the way that they are, because we are creatures of habit, we don't necessarily want to change our behavior. But a lot of these companies, they change their behavior. Now it's no big deal. If companies begin to do reductions in force. Now, I say that, and I don't say that lightly, because if you're the recipient of one of those notifications that your job is being removed or is no longer needed, well, you definitely feel it, right? But let me tell you something. The only person guaranteed to care about you and your well-being is you. So why are you the last person that you're taking care of? You haven't even put your name on the list of things to tend to. So think about that. You have to use your time off. So when you do that, you have the option, right? You can take the time off. And I don't mean this pseudo take time off where you are out of the office, but you're still responding to things as if you are in the office. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually scheduling time off, disconnecting so that you set those boundaries on the email, you delegate the tasks, and you say no. You don't even respond. And you can do that. And then maybe you're saying, well, no, I can't do that. Well, then maybe you've proven my point. And to take it a step further, if that is the case, then your job owns you. Think about that. You might as well have a barcode tattooed on your wrist. They just scan you in and, hey, they've bought you and bagged you up. Now, when you think back to even the CFO that I mentioned, the choices are you can be like the CFO and you can wait for years and years before you take time off, or you can make a decision and select something that works well for you. My point is, you don't want to let 5 years pass you by before you realize that all of this time has gone by. I have not taken time off. I'm extremely tired, but you have worked through the fatigue. Let me tell you that small choices, they do compound. Okay. If you rest now, you'll have better performance later. Okay. So then what can we do now? Well, you have one action. You can schedule your next break. Make it an extended vacation, make it a long weekend, maybe even a mental health day. But make sure that when you do this, that you turn off the notifications on your phone and even on your smartwatch, because you don't want to be bombarded when you're out of the office. And that's a clue as well. If you can't leave the office without receiving a lot of phone calls, texts, and emails, then that shows you that there are some things that you must address. So I want you to model this publicly for your team. Show them that it is okay to take off work. Do not make them feel guilty for taking off. And you shouldn't feel guilty either. You should not feel guilty for taking off the time that you earned. It is yours. And a lot of organizations, those that are in the position to do so, they have started to change their time off policies, and they front load it, meaning that this time is available for you. It is not going to roll over with few exceptions. So you must use it, because what they realized is a lot of people, specifically leaders, were not taking time off work. And of course, there's always the financial incentive. They don't have to maintain these accruals on their financial statements. So that tells you in and of itself that there's a monetary incentive for them to ensure that you take some time off. You use it or you lose it, right? So when you do this, like I said, set that out of office notification and do not apologize for being out of the office. Because, of course, now we're at the end of 2025. And so you want to ask yourself, what do I need to leave behind so that I can lead better in 2026? Well, one of the things to leave behind is these bad practices of not taking time for yourself. So before you finish listening to this episode, I want you to open your calendar. I want you to block 3 days, sometime in the next 60 days or so, and I'll wait. Now, if you're driving, well, then you know better. So you wait until you get to your destination before you do this, but make sure that you do it. Okay. And some of you are probably saying, okay, look, Shanita, I hear what you're saying, but I need something that I can actually do today. Well, what you can do today, okay, one small act of self-care within the next 24 hours, take a real lunch break. How many of you, all you do is sit at your desk, you sit at your computer and you work through your lunch? This does not help your digestion, by the way. So even something as simple as just stepping away from your desk and having lunch outside of your office can do wonders for you. Go for a walk, even if it's 10 minutes. It will help you to think more clearly. You'll feel better. Or how about treat yourself to a spa day? You can go out and treat yourself to a spa day. You can do it even at home. And that's one of the things that I do. And so while we're talking about doing a spa day, one of the things that I like to do is make soaps, and I handcraft all of these soaps myself. And my business is the Prickly Rose Soap Company. So for my listeners, I'm offering a 10% discount on your first purchase. You just go to the link in the notes and it'll take you to the website, and you can use the coupon code Catalyst10 that will also be in the notes. Take your self-care, your personal well-being seriously. You only have one life. Loyalty is wonderful. Quality of life is a requirement. You have to have time for yourself to recharge and refuel. So make sure that you do that. And remember to connect with me via newsletter. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. And the link to those are also in the notes. So until next time, be thoughtful, be wise, be strategic. And remember, crossroads reveal who you are. Catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters, so make it count. I'll talk to you next week.